We've hit 8 o'clock. I suppose we got to get this thing rolling if we're going to get done in an hour. So, thank you all for tuning in here this evening. I know there's a choice of things you could be watching tonight. We said we're going to talk about townships and zoning, and in particular when they have to deal with data centers. These things are popping up, and they're a really big concern. Some people don't like them. They're noisy. They have a lot of traffic. But on the other side, they should be paying a lot of taxes into your township coffer before too long. So there's good and bad with them. But as usual, we promote township zoning. We think that townships should take control of the situation and be better able to control where they're built and how they're done and what roads they use and all the general, usual concerns that townships have. And zoning is the best way to make sure that happens. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom. He's got a little presentation for us.
Maybe before I do that, Larry, maybe talk a little bit more about those what do you call those things again? These big operations.
Well, it's a data processing center. Bitcoin mining operations. That's not the only thing that they do, but that's one of the biggest things.
And one has popped up down in the Ellendale area. Another one is contemplated up in Minot someplace, I think.
No, it's up in Montreal County.
Okay.
And there is one in Williams County.
And just physically a big building with a lot of power usage, right?
That's right. The one down in Ellendale supposedly is like 400 employees. And they're looking for
250, but could be.
Okay.
No, the current building that they're building right now is gonna have 100 full-time employees.
Okay.
But there's even more construction workers there on site right now.
Yeah, currently it's construction workers that are in the area at the moment. But full-time in the next 3 years, it'll create huge economic boom for businesses and employment in the area.
But on the negative side, apparently the things make a lot of racket, a lot of noise. They use a lot of power and they got fans and it's really noisy. Is that the issue? One of the issues?
Well, I guess I'm not sure. I just toured the current one down here in Ellendale, North Dakota, a week and a half ago. And we drove a half mile to the north of it and a half mile to the south of it. And you couldn't even hear anything. The truck traffic on the roads or just road noise in general was more. And the rustling of the grass that we were next to was even louder than that. So we, at that time, I couldn't even hear it was going on. Currently, they're mining the Bitcoin. They got a bunch of little fans and things going, but I don't see that as too big an issue from my experience.
But is that not an issue that is potentially going to be a problem or a alleged problem? Is that what I've been hearing or not?
I guess I can't speak to that for sure. I can tell you exactly what I experienced a week and a half ago. So
the from a zoning standpoint, it is the road issues, of course, more usage of the roads. It's obviously not an agricultural, so you got to do some changing to some sort of commercial or industrial. And then I suppose with the construction side of it, it's kind of the analogy would be to the oil patch when we had a lot of man camps and things like that when they were drilling when it was busy out there. So I suppose that's some of the bigger issues I think with these things. Is that fair? Must be.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay,
well,
good,
I mean,
good.
yeah, it's gonna be busy here for a little while. So once you kind of get through that glut, I think once things are up and operating, like building anything, like building a grain bin on your farm or a grain leg, it's not done overnight. So,
Mhm.
but the size and scope of these is a little bit bigger than what people are used to. So
And then they're coming to North Dakota because of the availability of power. Is that part of it as well?
That's
Yep.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
yep, power and cheap cooling.
Yeah, so I guess you know, we need to learn, I guess, because if we're going to see more of these, and apparently they're coming out to these rural areas, and so you know, townships need to be ready, I guess. So
Yeah.
well, I know I guess I would start with this statement is that I am not a zoning expert, nor do I want to be. Okay, but because when in my practice, you know, I don't run across it much other than through this township gig. But you know, from a zoning standpoint, you know, we're way behind. You know, we've been zoning in this country for years, and we're still taking baby steps. We really are, and we're not there at all where we probably should be. But got to start someplace with our baby steps. So I thought what I'd do a couple of years ago, I did a kind of a zoning 101 situation. So let me see if I can find this here. Let's see, Larry, I got to share this if I can do this. Let's try this. Here we go.
For every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country.
Hey, that sounds like a debate there. Okay. Gotta cut down on that. Cut down that volume if you could.
That are occupied right.
There we go. Okay. All right. So what is zoning? Let me see if I can get this thing out of the way. I hope you can see that. First, a set of regulations restrict how property cannot be used, regulating the size, shape, and scale of buildings on a certain property in the township. Okay, so zoning as a general rule, just so that everybody, and I get that. Some of you are probably into more in the zoning than I am, which is fine. Because we have some resident experts out there, but you know, we know also a lot of people just don't have a clue what it is. So let's just start from zero here and just kind of get some basic words out of the way and kind of understand some of this. It is, of course, where the government tells you what you can do with your land. And that flies in the face of a lot of people. You know, a lot of people don't like that, but that's really what zoning is. We're restricting how you can use your property. Why do we do that? Well, because it's for the health and safety and welfare of the people. And you know, when you think about it, you don't want to have a slaughterhouse next door to a school. You know, you don't want to do that. You don't want to have a factory next door to a funeral home. So, you know, you want to try to have like businesses and like operate next to each other. You don't want to, if it's residential, that's where all the houses are supposed to go. You're not supposed to put the house over there next door to the hospital, for example. It's supposed to be all separate. That's kind of what the idea behind zoning is. Okay. And so, you know, we're primarily agricultural, and that's the types of zoning. Let me go to that. There we go. So we have zoning districts within the township. Most townships are zoned agricultural, so the entire 36 square miles is agricultural. You know, you have some residences there, but they're all part of the farmsteads. They're all where the farmers live, and so every once in a while you'll have a farmstead sits by itself, and somebody has bought the place and lives and works in town, but it's still out in the farm setting, and it's still a residence, but it's probably not involved in an active farming, but it's still agricultural. Okay. And so if you look at a real populated township, I see Ms. Leak is on up there in Grand Forks, or in your township, Ms. Leak, how many districts? Is it all agricultural in your township? Because you're right west of Grand Forks, aren't you?
We are a bit west, but yes, we are agriculturally zoned.
The whole township is?
Yeah, we've got quite a few rural residences, but it's all zoned agricultural.
Okay, I was thinking that maybe you might have a residential area in there or not,
No.
but okay, because she's right west of Grand Forks. Okay, so but you look at some of the townships right around Grand Forks, right around Fargo, right around Bismarck, around the bigger cities. They'll have a residential area, they'll have a commercial area, they'll have an industrial area within the township. Okay, but as a general rule, most of our townships are all zoned agricultural. Okay, building permits. So how does that work? Well, the owner of the land comes to the township and says, I want permission to build something on my land. A house, a grain bin, a shop, an elevator, a wind tower, a Bitcoin operation, whatever it might be. And that's what a building permit. So think about that. I have to get permission to build something on my land. There again, that kind of flies in the face of a lot of people, but there again, that's what zoning is all about. So then when we have a permit, then we are able to generate some rules if we have some rules written up. So as an example, the big one we use is always a setback requirement. So you're going to build a shop. We want to have at least 50 feet away from the road or 75 feet away from the road because they're snow catchers. But I want my bin over here. I want my right there, right by the road. Well, no, we don't want it right by the road because it's just going to be a problem. So you can build your grain bin, but it's got to be back in the road. That's a setback rule. Okay. And that's one of the simplest rules that a township can have from a zoning standpoint is just to have setback rules. Okay. Some exceptions to zoning. Here's one that we hear about: conditional use. The owner wants to use the property differently than what the zone calls for. So my example, can we have a beauty salon in the farm home? Okay. We want to have some extra income. One of us is licensed as a cosmetologist, a hairbender, as I used to call them. And so hey, can I have a shop? Can we build a beauty shop? And we'll upgrade the garage. We'll build a kind of an addition. Where we got an addition here, the kids have left, and I've got an extra room. Can we get it plumbed and get a license for a beauty salon? Well, that's no longer an agricultural use in that house, and that because if it's on the farm, it's a farmhouse. It's part of the farm operation. Well, no, that is not an agricultural use. It's commercial. So we can give the landowner, the homeowner, a conditional use permit. Okay, so that means you can use the property for the different use that you want under the following conditions, and then we list those in the permit. Probably it'd be some parking issues. Maybe there would be maybe one of the things we'd say that you have to make sure that the operation is fully licensed by the state, because those places have to be licensed. Obviously, you have to follow whatever rules that you're supposed to follow, and that'd be part of the condition. And then maybe one of the things would be part of the condition: if you ever sell your farmstead and you move to town, then that conditional use doesn't go with the new owner. So if the new owner wants to have a beauty salon, then that person's got to come and get their own permit. Okay, so it doesn't go with the house. That might be an example of one of the conditions. Okay? So that's an exception to the zoning rules that you got in place. What else we got here? How about this word, variance? We hear about that one a lot. Owner uses her property as the zone calls for, but with a requested minor change. I want to build that grain bin, but can I put it a little closer to the road than what's required? Say we got a 75-foot rule, but I've measured it out, and there's a hill over here, and there's a big tree over here, and if I could put it at 69 feet, it would fit in really well. Well, 69 feet is not 75. I want to fudge a little bit by about 6, 7, 8 feet. So you could give the owner of the property a variance. You're going to vary that's where the word comes. It's still a 75-foot rule, but you're going to allow this one person to have an exception. The trick with this one, however, is you got to document, why did you do it? Otherwise, you're going to get the guy that says, hey, wait a minute, Charlie over here, he's got a bin that's too close to the road. How come I can't? Well, he's got a special deal here, and we documented why it's a special deal. He had a tree and a rock in the way and blah, blah, blah. And so we gave him an exception. So you got to document that variance. Okay. What I got here? Extraterritorial. There's another term we hear in this business. Okay. What does that mean? Cities, because cities have a tendency to grow outward. And so think about it. Think about the city limit line, and right next door is the township. And so the township's agricultural and the city's residential or city stuff. And all of a sudden, the city wants to go out. They want to, they don't want to have that. They don't want to have that slaughterhouse right next door to the city limits. So there again, let's allow the city to go out beyond their city limits, the extraterritorial, that's where the word comes from, go beyond their city limits and control what's going out there right on the approaches into the city. So as you got a main highway coming into the city, even though that it's out in the township, but that's where the gas station should go. That's where the little C-store should go. That's where maybe the fertilizer plant should go. It's in the township, but the city wants to control what the approaches into the city. So that's an extraterritorial zoning, 1 or 2 miles depending upon the size of the city. Here's the thing though that some people get mixed up on. Just because the city can zone a mile out, that's still not city property. It's still not city governed. It's still governed by the township. Okay, so those people living out there at a half a mile from the city, they're still township residents. They're still township voters, but they're subject to the city's zoning rules. Okay, that's the extraterritorial. So some townships get that mixed up. Oh, it's extraterritorial. We don't have anything to do with it. Yeah, you do. They're still your residents. You're still getting the taxes. It's just that property is governed by the city's zoning body. And that's an extraterritorial definition. Zoning meetings. Okay, so here's one that I think that we fall down on a lot. The zoning commission, body, whatever it is, it's a separate group. Okay. The hard part about it is it's the supervisors that are doing it. Okay, so I take my supervisor hat off and I put my zoning hat on. Okay, it's a separate thing. And so those are public meetings. They got to require notice. And sometimes I get that question a lot. What kind of notice do I have to have for a zoning meeting? I don't know. Why not? Because that's your deal. There's nothing in the state law about notice for zoning meetings. That's all within your own zoning ordinance. I always say we got 1,300 townships, potentially 1,300 different zoning ordinances and 1,300 different rules. Okay. So some zoning ordinances would require 10 days. Some zoning ordinances require 5 days. Some zoning ordinances require 2 weeks. It's up to you. And you got to read your own ordinance and see what it does. Now, if you don't have anything in your zoning ordinance, then that's one of the amendments you should probably put in, is what kind of notice do we have to have for our meetings? And maybe, for example, a building permit, maybe that doesn't require much notice. But maybe if I'm going to change, say I'm going to go from agricultural to residential, well, that's a big deal. Maybe we need to have a longer public notice for that. So those are the kind of things you got to look at. But every zoning ordinance governs itself, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. But it is not a township meeting. It's a zoning meeting. Okay. So what do you do at zoning meetings? You deal with these building permits, you deal with these conditional uses and variances and all that other stuff we just got done talking about. Or if you want to amend your ordinance, that's what some townships are doing. That's what you do there. You don't talk about whether we're going to gravel a road today. We're not going to talk about whether we should change out a culvert. We're not going to talk about has the clerk paid any bills, treasurer paying bills. That's a township meeting. That's a supervisor meeting. That's township business, not zoning business. It's 2 separate groups, 2 separate bodies, 2 separate meetings, 2 separate meeting minutes. Same people. That's where it gets a little confusing. So you just got to be careful. So And one of the ways that you can kind of help yourself out there, if you want to have a zoning meeting and a supervisor meeting, just have them on the same day. Supervisor meets at 10 o'clock and the zoning meeting meets at 11. And so you put it in the same notice and you just got separate minutes and you just do it that way. That's the easy way to do that. So. Okay. That was my zoning 101. Before I leave you, I think I have another little slide here. Let me just go to this one if I can catch this one here. This was a longer one. It talks about all kinds of different stuff here. Here's examples of a variance request. You know, so people come to you and say, I want to build a house on a smaller acreage than what is required. Some zones, so you got to have a 5-acre parcel. You got to have at least 3 acres. You got to have 10. They're different acreages. Some townships have done that. Okay, and usually that's for septic tank purposes, usually or sewage purposes, because of water table issues. And by the way, that's why we want to have zoning is for health and safety. That's why we do it. You know, sometimes I've heard, well, I don't want to have that. I don't want to have that wind tower there because it's ugly. Well, that's not a reason for zoning. You gotta couch it in some sort of safety terms or health and welfare. It's too close to a house. Okay, then we're seeing that. We're seeing some zoning regulations going in around the state on wind towers. They want to have them you know, a certain distance away from housing. Leon, out there in that wind farm area in your area, is there a minimum distance from a house on those things?
Well, there's very few houses near them, but I would say about a quarter to a half a mile.
Okay.
All of them.
Yeah.
That far away.
Yeah. Okay. And I think I just talked to somebody. They wanted to try to have a mile, and I said that sounds a little too far away. You know, I don't know why they want to do it because they're ugly. They think they're ugly, but I said you got to somehow show it's going to be dangerous or too close to a house or something like that. So I request a second story.
On our way, they went from a quarter of a mile to a half a mile.
Half mile. Okay. And that's probably, you know, that makes sense because I suppose, you know, you could have a blade falling off or, you know, a big wind or something, and the thing, you know, you could end up with some injuries, I suspect, if some of that stuff goes flying around, you know, and you got people living there. Sure. Here's another go ahead, Leon.
It was more for noise.
Noise. Okay. Are those things pretty noisy? I guess I've stood by them, but are those things pretty noisy?
When there's a 40-mile-an-hour wind, you will hear them, but then they shut them down after 40 mile an hour.
Okay. Yeah, of course, 40-mile-an-hour wind pretty loud anyway. So
Yes.
what else we got for a variance request? I want a second-story addition on a one-story zone. Some, especially around in cities, you'll see you can only have a one-story house. Okay, so I want to build a 2-story addition. You probably wouldn't see that out in the country, but I own an odd-shaped lot. I want to reduce slightly the setback requirements to fit the building, and so there again, you're going to probably see that in a little bit more populated area. Okay, but out in the country, out in the real rural area, I think we want to try to keep that stuff away from the roads as much as we can because it ends up being snow catchers here. So I think I had a little quiz in this one. Or did I have a little quiz? Yes, I did. Let me go find it here. Yeah, I did here.
Tom, in our area, the setback is 200 feet.
It is. What did you say?
Our setback here in Heidegger County is 200 feet.
Okay.
For anything.
200 feet. Okay. Well, for anything, that's good because you know, you figure a row of trees or a garage or a shop, you know, that's far enough away so you're not going to end up with any kind of snow drifts. Sure. So a farm couple requests to start a beauty shop business in their farm home. What are they going to be looking for? They're going to be looking for a conditional use permit. Okay, that's what that would be. Okay, that's what that would be. Farmstead owner requests to build a farm shop closer to the road than the setback distance. That farmstead, he's gonna be looking for a variance. Yeah, he's gonna be looking for a variance. Yep, and that's what the zoning body would be looking at. Owner of 160 acres in the township, but very near to the nearby city, He requests to develop his property into a subdivision with 15 new houses planned. So he's got a quarter land in the township. It's agricultural. He wants to build a subdivision. What's he going to be doing? What's he want to do? He wants to create a residential zone. Okay, that's a big deal. We're changing from agricultural to residential. That's going to require an amendment to your zoning ordinance. You're going to have a different P in your map. In your map, you're going to have a little area that shows this is residential. Okay. And I think if you got some subdivisions, you got some of those where you got 5 or 6 houses living in a row, probably want to go to your zoning. If you're zoned, you want to say, hey, let's make that a residential. So that way, when the next guy comes in and wants to build a house, well, that's where it's got to go. That's where it's got to go. So you're changing the zone, you're changing the district, you're changing your map. That's a bigger deal. Wind power company requests a permit for the proposed wind tower development in the township. What's that person looking for? They're looking for a conditional use permit because they're going to use this from other than agricultural. Okay. They're going to use the permit. They're going to use the property for a different purpose than what the zone calls for. And so we're going to give them that permit. And here's the following conditions. So far from the minimum distance from houses, probably wind towers, you're probably going to want to have maybe a frontage road, only one approach off of the road to get there. You're probably going to want to have some sort of a maintenance agreement so that when they come and work on the wind towers, they're gonna not chew up your road. Okay, that's the kind of thing that you'd probably want to have in the conditions. A lot of these wind towers, cell towers, tower companies, when they want to build something, they're coming to the townships and say, we need a permit. And a lot of townships are looking at them with a blank look and say, what are you talking about? We don't have permits. Well, that's what they're looking for because they've been to the Public Service Commission in Bismarck, especially the wind towers. They got to get permission from the PSC. And part of the requirements for the PSC is have you gotten permits from the local governing body, township and or the county? And so if the township is not zoned, you got to give them some sort of permission because they need to have that on their check blank on their check mark when they get their state permit. So you're going to have to develop some sort of a permission slip or permission document or something because they're looking for that. Nothing else, you're going to have some sort of meeting and allow them to do this. And this is why if you're zoned, you got that permitting process already in place. And so that's in a way, when they come to you and ask for the permit, they're doing you a favor because now you've got some control over what's going to happen. I think that was the last one. Or it could be, I'm sorry, it could be a new industrial zone too. We're going to put up a cell tower, a bunch of wind towers, and so maybe that would be the time to amend you. Okay, all the wind towers are going to be over here. That's an industrial zone where those wind towers are supposed to be. Okay, no longer just straight agricultural. In other words, fit your zoning ordinance to fit what's going on out there. And you might have to create a permit, as I said. So I think that was it. Okay, there we go. I'll stop that one. Okay. I think that's probably enough for now for me. That's kind of was my zoning 101. So I'll drop it there and give it back to Larry here, whoever wants to take over.
I'm looking for Camilla. Is that you, Tom?
Who's Camilla? Oh, Kamala.
Well, this isn't a debate.
This isn't the debate. This is not the debate. No.
You look better than Camilla or Kamala or Camel, whatever.
Leon must be watching it because I can tell he's watching a TV over there. So
Yeah.
how are they doing?
How are they doing? I have no
He's
idea.
pretty serious and she just shakes her head.
Okay, well, I suppose I figured that we'd probably be able to see most of it after this anyway, because they're going to play it over and over and over and over anyway. So
It'll be on all night.
yeah, that plus they're going to tell us what they really said. So
Yeah. Yeah. So what I just got on, I'm in Bismarck for real estate continuing ed stuff. So I just got on here. Anything important that I don't know?
Oh, of course. Of course, we just did a little zoning 101, Rod. That's what we did. So
My ears were burning, so.
yeah. Okay. So what do we get? You got any question? And I, this Township Tuesday is not supposed to be, it's driven by you folks. So if you guys got questions or got other topics you want to talk about, this is our second month with the second go round. So we're still kind of in the baby steps learning stage of how this is supposed to work, but we stole the idea from Minnesota. They do this, Minnesota townships do this, I guess, pretty regularly. And so we thought, well, let's give it a try, 1 day a month, and get on the Zoom and visit about township stuff. And so here we are. So
Good.
So this is for Rod. Yes, this is everything you don't know, Rod.
Uh-oh. I've been waiting for this.
oh yeah. Yeah,
Is it open for questions now or?
absolutely. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
In fact,
Okay.
jump in on questions. There we go. But yeah, you bet.
Yeah, so I just had a couple. I just had one on the guys are going to go through this process of zoning. First, do you have to call a special meeting and then set up your zoning group of people and then put together your zoning ordinance, or what's the exact steps you need to take to get that done?
Remember what I said, I'm not a zoning expert, right? Yeah, and that sounded pretty exact to me what you had there, but let me back up. Call a special meeting. I'm going to ask you the question. Special meeting of whom? Of what body?
Of the township. Do you have
Of
to
the-
notify
of
the
the
township residents that you're going to be having a meeting to zone?
Of the township residents, yes. Okay, so that's a special meeting of the township, not a special meeting of the supervisors, but a special meeting of the township.
Is that
Because-
I guess it's more so a question than.
Yeah, because the supervisors themselves cannot make the decision to zone. That's a resident-driven decision. The township residents are going to decide whether we should be zoned or not. Okay, and so they speak through a special meeting or the annual meeting. Okay, now once again, remember, it's the same people, right? It's annual meeting, you get 3 supervisors and a clerk and maybe one other. There you are, okay? But you're not a supervisor on that meeting, you're the resident, okay? So a meeting of the residents, that requires a special meeting. That's a 10-day notice in the newspaper, okay? That's entitled 58 under meetings, okay? So a special meeting of the township requires 10-day notice. The agenda must be listed in the notice. So you'd want to have a proposed zoning discussion or something like that. Okay. And then at that meeting, then the people would vote. They would authorize the supervisors to begin the zoning process. And whether they want to have the supervisors do it, whether you want to form a working committee or some group to do it, doesn't matter. Maybe you would have had some preliminary work first. You would have had some ideas, and you would present those to the people. Okay, maybe the cart before the horse. Technically, the residents are supposed to authorize the supervisors to begin the zoning process. That's typically how that works. But most of the time, you got some proposed language, and you got some ideas anyway already. So. I know that the one township I've been talking to, they got some wind towers coming, and so they've already been looking at, some wind tower ordinances, and been thinking about some ideas already. So by the time they had their special meeting, they basically had most of the stuff already talked about because they've been doing it informally. Okay, but the point is that on the book, someplace you have, in order for this, let me fast forward. You've got a zoning ordinance in place and somebody's going to challenge you. Somebody's going to challenge your zoning ordinance. So they're going to look at your records. And so someplace you're gonna have to have a record of a meeting of the township residents that authorize the zoning. You're gonna have that someplace, some meeting that you had, okay? So that's would be typically that'd be the first meeting you'd have. Then you'd have to show that you had a meeting to adopt the final ordinances. And then you'd have to show that you've had some proper meetings of your zoning body, the issue permits or not, and all that stuff that goes with it. So, you always want to build your case for that possibility that somebody's going to challenge you. So, long answer to a short question, but yeah, you have to have a meeting of the people to authorize the zoning, and then you're going to have that you have to write those ordinances up what you want, and then you're going to have a meeting to approve it. And then of course you got to enforce it. You're going to have to have a regular meeting of your zoning body to issue permits and do all this stuff that you're supposed to do. So does that kind of answer that, Drew, or not?
Yeah, it does a little bit, just seeing the exact process, I guess.
Yeah.
And then
Go ahead.
I guess my other one too was on extraterritorial districts.
Yep.
If a guy, does the township have to work with the city while they're making their zoning ordinances, or can they just do that on their own? And then if the city wants to expand or change anything, they'll just have to work with the township on that.
Well, yeah, the state law allows extraterritorial. Larry, help me here. Is it still 1 mile and 2 miles? Is that what it is?
I believe
Sue, jump in there if you want. Go ahead, Sue.
Yes,
Mile for it's a population based, isn't it?
yes,
So Grand Forks is what, 2 miles?
yep.
And where's the 1 mile differentiation? Do you know?
I don't know. Everything else in Grand Forks County is 1 mile.
Yeah. Larry, do you know it's a population number, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably something like 10,000.
Yeah, there's a number. There's a population number where it goes from 1 mile to 2 miles. Okay. So state law allows cities to have extraterritorial zoning. And so the process, I'm not sure, but my guessing is the city council probably establishes the extraterritorial zone. Some cities include a township representative on the extraterritorial zoning board. Some cities do
I think that's a requirement.
Okay, is it? Okay.
I think so.
I know there's some cities that don't do it. So
At least for the bigger cities.
yeah, and I'm guessing why some cities don't do it is because the townships have been asleep at the switch. So when a small town wanted to go extraterritorial, then they probably put a notice out to the local townships, and the local townships just didn't show up. Probably what happened, so, but I think they're supposed to so there again, Drew, to answer your question, yeah, I think you have to work with the city, and I think if it is a requirement, I guess I don't know the answer to that question, but if it is a requirement, then you should demand to have a township person on the extraterritorial zoning group when they deal with permitting and that kind of thing that's out in the township. So
Yeah, Drew, where are you located?
Oaks.
Oaks. Just north of Grand Forks in Falconer Township. They've been going round and round, but Frank Matichek's on the board there, and he understands this extraterritorial zoning stuff inside out.
and Frank was dealing with Falconer was dealing with that Fufeng deal. Yeah, that's what.
But he's been on the city zoning board for 20 years.
Okay, yeah. So Grand Forks
as
has
well as the
included
township.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Grand Forks has included them. Yeah, so
Yes.
so yeah, that and Frank would be a good resource for us. I'd
Very.
forgotten about that, but yeah. So anyway, yeah, so down in Oaks there, Drew, my guess is that if Oaks is exercising their extraterritorial zoning, then you need to be at the table, I think. And if nothing else, they're public meetings. Everything in this state is public. So you certainly could be there, if nothing else, just as a concerned citizen from the neighboring township, and you could give them your 2 cents that way too. So because they're all public meetings.
Okay, and the other way on this is your township zoning commission. If you abut a municipality, you have to include 2 members from that municipality on your zoning commission.
Yes,
Work the other way around, I mean. In
Right.
other words, you're saying, yeah, so if your township is zoned and you got a city within, yeah, okay, gotcha, yeah. Yeah, and there again, it's all part of the orderly flow and orderly flow of buildings and construction in the area, so we don't end up with, my example always is the slaughterhouse next door to the school. That's not what we want. Because it's just not, doesn't work. And so, and you can drive around the countryside and you can see, you'll ask yourself, why in the heck is that junkyard right there? Well, because nobody had any control over it, so why is that grain elevator right next door to that in the city of Mayville? We got an elevator right next to the school. But of course, the elevator was there first before the school was, and so, but there it is, so it got trucks and dust all over, and then little kids are out there in the bus. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. But that's because there wasn't any planning when at the time anything was built. So, and that's I meant my earlier statement was that we're in North Dakota. I think we're still really making baby steps here. We're just not into this, and so I understand, and we got plenty of other stuff to do, but as townships, but the problem is that we got people moving out to the country. We got industrial things coming in. We've got commercial things coming in, things that our grandfathers never thought of, and there they are. So welcome to progress, I guess.
Could I raise my hand for a second here?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, jump in.
Okay, so you guys have talked about the relationship with the city and those ordinances expanding beyond the limits, but, and I know I talked to Larry about this because of my personal experience where we're building a house and we're outside Grand Forks city limits, but there was a time and place, as I understand it, and I'm sure you two gentlemen could explain it better, but there was a time where the townships had to decide if they're going to develop their own zoning and continue that, or just let that go back to the county. So this has nothing to do with the city. This is a county ordinance.
Mhm.
So now the county is demanding all kinds of things, and we're trying to build a house and it's getting really extreme. So because it's an agricultural area, instead of being 2.5 acres, it has to be 5 acres. So we had land acquired, now we have to buy more, and we have to replat it, rezone it, resurvey it. So now I had to spend $4,200 in survey costs. We had to buy land at $5,000 an acre. We had to pay the attorney $2,200. Just all these expenses that I think are ridiculous.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with paying the attorney now, is there?
Yeah, there is. So the whole thing got so exorbitant, and at the end of the day, when I talked to the county planner, Lane Magnuson, he's like, "Oh, I had no idea," but I answered the county, and I said, "Well, maybe I need to go into a county commission meeting and explain all of these expenses and how this is probably restricting people from moving to the county, outside of the city limit."
Really is.
Yeah.
I think all we have is agricultural and residential.
Is that Marty? Is that you talking? I think I hear you. I see your lights come on. Did you say something there, Marty?
No,
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're okay. You're like, we could hear you there talking. But yeah. So county, so there's a couple things in what you just talked about there, Paul. One was, the plotting and the platting. That's a county auditor requirement. Okay, so when you carve out a piece of property, you used to be able to say, starting at the corner, you go 100 feet this way, 40 feet that way. That's meets and bounds, okay, they call it. counties don't let you do that anymore, or at least a lot of counties don't let you. So now you have to have an actual survey and you have to call it an auditor's lot number 2 or auditor's lot number 4. You know, they have to have a surveyor that designates that as. You just can't use that so many feet this way, so many feet that way. Can't do that anymore. So the plotting there was not a zoning requirement, it was a county auditor requirement. That's another layer of the bureaucracy that you got involved with there. Larry, explain that. I can never get this straight on this county zoning, giving up and getting it back again. How's that all
Back
work
on.
again?
Okay, if the township failed to enact zoning back in, this was back in the 70s. Then it,
Say Marshall, I think your mic's hot there. So there we go. Thanks. Go ahead, Larry.
if the township failed to zone back then, it fell on the county to do it. Okay, when the Constitution was revised, it developed a problem in that case, that the township had basically forced the county to take it. And at that point, the township could not get it back. No way. There was no way for the township to get it back from the county. We got the law changed probably about 10 years ago. So the county and township can enter into a joint powers agreement to let the township have the zoning control again. So it is possible now, but that requires the county be willing to give the zoning control, and that doesn't always happen.
So
that-
let me get that straight. So for those townships that cannot get zoning back, what was the deal there again? That's because they never had it in the first place? Is that what it was? No.
They didn't do it, so the county had to take it over, and there was no agreement between them
At that time.
at that time.
This is in the 70s, right?
So
Yeah.
I thought that they were offered the opportunity to either do it themselves or let the county take it over. And if they did nothing, then the county took it over, is what I understood.
right.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, the original law was that the townships would zone. The county wasn't even in the question. But then if the township didn't do it, then the county had to do it.
So
Kurt-
now the township and the county can agree that the township, both parties have to agree, and then the townships can take their zoning back. Basically.
Right. But that requires that the county be agreeable to it.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen very often anymore.
Yeah,
Because when
And
they
part
have
of-
control, they want to keep control.
they want to keep control, and part of the reasons why I can understand why some counties would not want to have some townships be zoned, because the townships are not going to do the work. They're going to say, well, we want our zoning back. Well, then, okay, then you got to have a zoning board, you got to have zoning ordinances, and you got to enforce the darn thing. When people want to get building permits, you got to meet with them and you got to give it to them. You got to deal with them, so you just can't put the zoning book up on the shelf and dust it off once in a while. You got to actually do it, and I can see that happening with some counties. We're not going to let that township zone because they're not going to do anything, even though they say they want to. So I suspect in up in Grand Forks County, I suppose if you're, I suppose the county wants to keep control, and they don't want to allow townships to do it because then they end up with a hodgepodge of stuff, I suppose. But
Yeah,
How do-
Paul,
Well,
I had a question kind of similar to that. Sorry to interrupt if anybody else has another question, but kind of right on this topic. Currently, Dickey County is just about wrapping up a whole zoning process itself. And can a township be trying to zone at the exact same time that the county's zoning, or will that somewhat like supersede, once that county gets zoned, basically what you just mentioned, once the county's zoned, then your township will just kind of follow suit if they're not zoned already.
Yeah,
Well,
And-
go ahead, Larry, go ahead.
I believe that if the township gets zoned first, that would take precedence. If the county gets zoned, then they'd have to go through if the county gets zoned before the townships can get it done, then they'd have to go through the joint powers agreement then to get it back from the county, since at the time the county did it, the township hadn't done it.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, Dickey County, of course, they're obviously been asleep with this switch too, because they should have been zoned long ago too,
Well,
But-
well, they had been zoned. They just haven't met with their zoning task force for like 25 years, and they're just trying to kind of re-up it a little bit type deal.
So
So,
they-
technically,
Oh.
they already zoned.
So they weren't, no, but I would say they weren't zoned, because if they haven't done anything for 25 years, they're not zoned, they're not, even
So
though
they-
they say they are, same.
Yeah,
But-
okay, so
but-
that just expires then if you don't use it in so long. Then
Well, no,
if you
no.
are zoned, then you're not zoned, or how does that work?
No, it doesn't expire. It just that if you try to do something, it's not gonna be enforceable, that's, so I guess if somebody were to, my point is if somebody were to challenge it, they'd get thrown out, I suspect, it just had, so yeah, they've been zoned for 25 years. But if somebody were to challenge them, I imagine it'd be pretty easy to get their zoning ordinance thrown out.
Okay,
So yeah, technically, you're right, technically they are zoned, and so the township wasn't zoned, so yeah, but it seems to me it'd be pretty easy to get an agreement in place, because hey, county, you haven't been zoned either, really, so I think you could probably get an agreement going, but there again, I mean, if the township wants to zone, then you have to do it, and you have to have a set of ordinances that make sense, and it's gonna have to correlate with whatever the county's got, Paul, you had a two and a half acre minimum, and it went to 5. Give me that again.
Correct. So if it's already zoned as a residential area, something set aside, they could be 2.5 acres.
No, that was a county rule.
Correct.
Okay.
So then what I did was we bought a farm place for my daughter, and it's like 15 acres, and want to just separate off this northern part,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
2-3 acres, and we tore out the trees and built a road in to build another house, but they said, no, it's not enough, get up 5 acres. Well, we didn't want to infringe on her.
Where did that 5 acre rule come from? Where did that 5 acre rule come from?
Lane Magnuson at the
No,
Grand
is
Forks
it-
County
that's a county,
Planning
that's a
Zone.
county, but what authority did he have to, either you had a 2.5 acre requirement or you didn't?
Lane makes things up a lot.
Okay, so I mean, it was a 2.5 acre minimum, is that what or that's what
No,
was?
that was residential, but since this was agricultural land, we had to have 5 acres.
Where did it say that someplace?
Lane said it, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
he told somebody in our township they had to have 15, so, and we're zoned completely, so.
Well, there again, I mean, now we're talking about, potential personality issues, and I get that too, but if you got a 2.5 acre minimum and you got 2.5 acres, how does that get changed to 5? That can't be that can't be a unilateral decision. Would have to be a zoning ordinance change, an amendment, okay?
When I asked him where it comes from, he just said, I work for the county commission. You take it up to the county commission. That's all he would say.
Which township is it, Paul?
Pleasant View.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I thought
Yeah.
that's where you were, okay.
That just doesn't sound, doesn't sound right to me, because, that's the whole point of, that is the whole point of when you have in the zoning ordinances, when you have measured situations, so many feet, so many acres, certain heights, for example, on top, those are measurable numbers. And so if those numbers get changed, there has to be a process to change them. And that's really curious how that would happen there, but you know, maybe it's just a personality thing, which is unfortunate, but
here's the issue. When you're in my position,
mhm.
he's the last guy you want to tick off
Right,
because he's going to come and determine what type of sewer you can have, what type of foundation and everything else. So you just kind of keep your mouth shut, hoping he doesn't make even more expenses for you, whether
yeah,
he's right or wrong.
yeah, I get that,
Yeah,
except
because
that
we are just,
except when you talk about sewers, and that's building code issues. That's state building code, and there it is. I mean, whatever it is, you know, so.
but he's still the same guy that comes out and measures. And I met him there to do the sewer. He had a drill, but he waited for me. I have a mini excavator there, and I dug down and measured, and he determined what type of sewer I need. So, I don't want to ruffle too many feathers because I don't want him to cost me even more money.
Yeah, I
because
get
I'm
that.
scared of the bureaucratic bullshit.
Yeah, I get that. I do. I get that. But I'm just saying it doesn't
So you're
sound.
probably right, but if we tick those people off, they make our lives miserable.
Yeah.
They make us miserable. They will just change laws, make us do expensive, like
Yeah.
hill mound sewers and anything you
Yes.
do, will pick them
Yeah.
out.
So moral of the story, I guess, if we turn this around and I understand, I can feel your personal pain. I can feel it. Okay. But turning that around as a township, as a zoning body, then don't be that guy, you know. If you're the zoning body and you're issuing permits, and then don't be that kind of guy, follow your own rules.
I tried to reverse it, and I talked to Larry about this at length, and to get it's a huge process to go back to the county to reverse that to get your own zoning. It's a huge process, Larry said, and it would be so difficult and time consuming, it wasn't worth doing it.
And that is there again, that kind of relates to my story about how townships we've been taking, you know, we should have been taking these baby steps back in the 70s, and we didn't. You know? And so now
they did nothing. The township supervisors before me just did nothing. They let it slide. Now the county's in control.
And now we're living with the mistakes that were made by our forefathers there on the township board. Sure, absolutely. So now we got to live with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if any township wanted to take that step and do those things, is there a checklist or template or something like that for a township to walk through to do those things?
You mean to establish a zoning ordinance, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, one thing about zoning ordinances is they're all public records, so you can plagiarize, you can cut and paste, you know, you can do that. The trick, though, of course, is you got to have a comprehensive plan, which deals with your environmental situation in your township. Yeah, you know, Mayville Township is not the same as Williston Township. It's 300 miles apart. Water levels are different, water tables are different, topography are different, soil samples are different, you know, everything, you know, even one township to the next is different. So you have to build it's called a comprehensive plan, which you can copy somebody's, but it better fit your township. That's probably one of the hardest things to write is why do we want to have certain kinds of septic tanks in this township? Because we have a water table that's X, that's such and such, you know. So why do we want to have 200-foot setbacks in our township? Because we got wide open prairies and we got wind, and we're not like the township down the road. It's got trees and forests over there. Okay, so we don't have to worry about drifting. So every township's got their own plan. So what I'm getting at is that, yeah, you can cut and paste and plagiarize a lot of regulations. You can do that, but you have to make sure that it fits your particular environment. But from a checklist standpoint, you know, you got to have that. As a township, you got to have your residents authorize the zone that you're going to establish zoning. That's got to be done at a meeting of the township. Either do it at the annual meeting in March or a special meeting. Okay. Because the residents have to authorize the zoning zoning process. And then once that happens, then it's just a matter of how do we have a one person, 6 people, 10, a committee? How do we get all this language together? Somebody's gonna go research this township, somebody's gonna go research that township, somebody's gonna take a look at various copies, start cutting and pasting and talking about different rules and regs. And at some point in time, you come up with a working document, which then the voters can approve. At a meeting again, and then a hearing, and then now you got an ordinance in place. So it's a checklist, but it's a process, what it is. But and I think the thing to do is, and I think do we still have some samples? Do we still have some zoning ordinances on the website, Larry? I can't remember. I haven't looked for a while. Do we still have some there?
Oh, I think we have probably Stanley
Stanley Township, which is right south of Fargo. Yeah,
Right.
and I thought
think
we had
those-
thought we had a couple more on it too, but just as Stanley Town, that's a pretty urban township, and we can get you can get copies of there's several townships that have their own websites that have got their zoning ordinance. You can go and look at those and pull those up and take a look at them. They're all public documents.
Yeah, Cass County, all zone townships are available on the county website.
There you go. Yeah.
So, can I interrupt for a minute here?
Sure.
I'm from Eddy County, New Rockford Township, and we just went through the whole zoning thing. And what I ended up doing was we took the county zoning ordinance and it was in PDF, we put it into Word, and then we edited it the way we wanted, put in New Rockford Township versus Eddy County. And then when it was done, we had the zoning ordinance, which agreed with the county, except for we changed stuff when it come to the wind farm.
That's right. Okay, that's right. Yeah, you get some different wind tower stuff in there, sure. So, and there again, your township, you had this wind farm coming, and so that was kind of a particular issue that you wanted to take a look at. Now, maybe I think it was Bob over there. I think you had to ask the question. Maybe you've got some issue in your town. Maybe for example, I've had townships that are worried about junkyards. So they really get involved with getting some junkyard language in their zoning ordinances. I've had townships that are concerned about cell towers. And so they've got some language in there about cell towers that they wanted to put in there. Okay. They didn't really care about setbacks, but they wanted some cell tower stuff in there. I've had some townships that dealt with, what was the last one I had? There was a church group that wanted to build kind of an apartment house next to their church because they basically formed a small little what I want to say, assisted living facility for some of their older members. So that was going to require some sort of a multi-family kind of housing deal. So they wanted to build that township wanted to build a zoning ordinance that had just some multi-housing language in it, okay? Because that was a particular thing that they were worried about, so they wanted to deal with. So usually that's what drives the zoning, is that you have some issue that is important or that's kind of burning in your township and you want to kind of deal with it. That's kind of how it happens a lot of times. And so I know I've had several townships that are concerned about setbacks from roads for new buildings. So they start looking at various townships and see what their setback requirements are, and they start looking what would be good for us, that kind of deal. So.
Yeah, I gotta agree with David here. The easiest way to do it though is to look at your county zoning and work from there, because if you've got essentially the same thing as the county, it makes everything a lot easier, but you still have the control over it. And then you can make adjustments as you feel.
Yeah, because then if you're looking at a variance permit, then it's coming from the township rather than the county. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was going to say to Bob, roughly between 20 and 27 years ago, my husband and I assisted, I think, 14 townships in Grand Forks County with their zoning. And we did have a checklist at that point. I can probably still dig it out.
There you go.
And that included in, what to say in your meetings. You need to, go through this and this, and, just like for your annual meetings, you got to ask 3 times, step by step, what you got to say so you don't mess up. I can probably dig some of that stuff out. We started doing it a lot because of Grand Forks County was targeted for pig CAFOs. And
Yeah,
so
okay.
that's what we were hitting there. And then came landfills, and it snowballed. And some of the townships haven't really kept up their zoning very well. And it's an interesting game, but at least for the mostly rural townships, there's just really not that much to do in a given year for a zoning administrator. You might have a house. There's really not that much that you have to do. And I wouldn't be afraid of it. The other thing is, I was going to say, is as far as comprehensive plans, they're not really all that scary. If you find one that's similar, you can copy a lot of it for the written part, and then you start adjusting it. It doesn't take that much. It's supposed to be written, but it certainly can be embellished with a lot of maps that I think make it a lot easier, but you do have to have the written part too. And I used to go through, and again, this was 25 years ago. I did comprehensive plans for all the local townships for $250 a piece.
In those comprehensive plans, I think the caveat is they gotta fit your ground and your
Yes,
topography. And
but it's not that hard to make
No.
them fit.
It shouldn't be, no.
It's not.
Sue, in your township, so are you the zoning officer, or what's your title?
Clerk, treasurer, and zoning, and I just added floodplain.
Okay, so in your township, you don't have a separate zoning officer?
Correct.
Okay, but that's you.
Yes, they appointed me as zoning officer.
Yeah, and there again too, that's another thing, is that you gotta have somebody that's gonna be dealing with this. And oftentimes it does fall on the clerk treasurer's shoulders, oftentimes it does.
I don't think the zoning administrator has to live in the township either, so you can, work with someone else too.
And I've been talking to the Devil's Lake townships about that, because around the lake, there's about 5 or 6 townships that I keep telling those guys, get one guy to be the zoning administrator for the entire lake, and because they all got basically the same zoning ordinances about cabin with the distances from the water and the number of docks and all that crap that they got around the lake. But to get one person to do it, and chances are there's enough business so that the fees that are coming in could be used to pay the guy, so yeah, you can oftentimes this work falls on the clerk or one of the supervisors, but it certainly could be somebody else too. So, and there again, probably should have somebody just like you're supposed to have a designated road overseer, should have somebody designated as a zoning officer too. So that's the person that is in charge of the application for permits and variances, and then sets the meetings and all that kind of stuff too. So 10 after 9, we did it. We got in an hour here. I don't know what's our rule, Larry? This is our second meeting ever. What's our rule?
Well, we'll ask once if there's any other questions. And
I did have one more question as well. I know we were talking about the zoning. I was kind of more looking for like the animal ag and things like this, where if a township gets maybe, say, excessively zoned, whether it be commercial or animal ag or something like that. And this last legislation that went through for funding, if the townships can use, the private reserve fund, or where they can get their money to fight some of these lawsuits that they're getting if somebody's coming in to build something and the township is zoned, we'll just say, very excessively, and and then these townships were reaching back and pulling money out of this taxpayer based reserve fund. And then I believe the last legislation session that kind of got canceled. Can that be used too if there's any other, businesses or anything coming in, or is that just pulled for agriculture for not being able to use those funds?
What you're talking about is the errors and omissions coverage under the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund. Anytime a township is sued, the Insurance Reserve Fund will defend them.
But in the
But
last
now I
legislative
believe they
session,
can't use that, correct?
that's how I read it,
That
Drew.
that was eliminated from that measure. That instead went to the ability to recover legal expenses. The prevailing party can recover legal expenses.
So the fund will still defend it. That didn't get through. Yeah. Then that was
Oh,
some legislators got off on a tangent and just say, hey, if you get sued, we're not going to let the insurance reserve fund defend you. Well, that's violates contract law. So so that's part of the deal. But you purchase the insurance, you have a right to have the defense. So yeah, you'll be defended, and if you lose, then they can go after costs and fees. Yeah. So, and that's any lawsuit, I guess. That's always potential. That's a potential problem. But no, your insurance will defend you in those kind of lawsuits. That's the whole point of liability insurance.
And the Insurance Reserve Fund is not tax supported. It is supported by premiums.
Okay.
Premium-
Thanks for
premium.
clarifying that. Where's the
Yeah,
premiums come from?
Premiums come from us, of course, from the political subdivisions. You're paying them, so
Okay.
indirectly, I suppose it's tax. It's
So
tax
it comes
dollars.
from our tax dollars, which get put back to there. So it's from the taxpayer.
Yeah, except that it's just like a city buys a swimming pool, same deal. We pay property taxes into the political subdivisions, townships, cities, counties, schools, parks, all that. And then those agencies, those political subdivisions use those dollars to buy gravel, buy stop signs, and buy insurance. So it's all tax dollars. That's our source of revenue, is all tax money, of course. Property tax and gas tax and that kind of thing. So insurance premiums are no different than using your tax dollars to buy a stop sign.
Nope, got you. That kind of clarified my question. I was trying to think of there. I wasn't sure how all that shook out exactly.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I was a little concerned about that, Bill, but yeah, it did get fixed.
Okay, the Century Code covering township zoning begins in 580310 and continues on. That's on page 178 in the 2024 edition, and it continues on to page 181. So it's just a few pages that cover the township zoning controlling statutes. So you can read through that and see what the exact laws are for that. Any other questions for this evening?
And then what is there any, I know through that section and that if we end up doing some zoning in our township, what's the transparency? I know I did read that part in the township handbook. It said it had to be basically written and a document accessible, but how, is that, does it have to be on the county website or where's that supposed to be posted, or is it just under Aunt Nellie's box of cookies somewhere on her counter? Or, I mean, if somebody's trying to access this and do something, what, how transparent does it have to be, or where's it, what's the rule say for a township on how a person's supposed to be able to access that? I'm just wondering on accessibility for ours if we end up zoning.
The old open records question. Yep.
Well, it's, most cases, file it with the county auditor. And the township clerk should also have a copy available or make copies available. If it has anything to do with livestock, it has to be in the central repository at the water DEQ water quality central repository.
That's Bismarck, I'm assuming.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, as a township, we do not have a website. We just let people know that copies are available from the township clerk. And of course, it's filed with the county and with the central repository as well.
Okay, yeah.
And that brings up a point about township clerks is that, you know, and we talked about that at one of these workshops several years ago. They all kind of get into the mush here sometimes, but you know, township clerks are the public face of the township. And most township clerks, their office is the kitchen table. And their file cabinet is the one right below the junk drawer in the kitchen. You know, that's kind of where the file cabinet is. And so that's what's different about it, because if you go to the county, you know, they got an office. You go to the city, they got an office someplace. You go to the school, there's an office, but you go to the township, the office is in the clerk's house. And that's always an issue. But that's the public repository for documents. And so clerks sometimes have to understand that. And I think supervisors have to understand that. That's where the public records are. And so like Sue says, yeah, zoning is filed with the county auditor, so now it's in another place. Okay, and so a member of the public wants to get a copy of this thing, they can get it from the county auditor. If there is a county website that the townships can use, then obviously that's a great place to put stuff. Some counties let townships use the county website for their stuff, you know. So, and like I say, some townships do have their own websites too, but you know, the bottom line is you got to have it someplace where the public can find it, you know. And so and we always say, and clerks, of course, don't, you know, you don't have business hours. I mean, if you go knocking on the courthouse door at 5 o'clock, the door's locked. Okay. Technically, you go knocking on the clerk's door at the farm, 5 o'clock, it should be locked. Obviously, it's not, but you know, but basically, the clerk has to have basically business hours as well, even though chances are somebody shows up at Sue's door at 7:30 at night or after supper, she's probably going to give them the copy because hey, this is my house, you know. So that's kind of the difference. But I always tell clerks is that you know, have yourself some office hours, and so you get called at 8 o'clock at night, say, hey, you gotta call me back in the morning. You know, that's just like you would any other office. So that's my editorial about clerks.
Hey, what would your opinion be? You know, I'm involved in a lot of businesses. We have groups of investors and things, and we use Dropbox a lot. And that allows us to put documents in there, and some are view only and some you can change and so forth. But something like that it's stored off site from, I mean, just in case your county person changes and his stuff isn't accessible, it'd be saved there forever. Wouldn't that be a good idea?
Well, I think as long as the public can get at it, you know, I mean, if that's the only place it's going to be, then the public can't view it, you know. So the public has to have access. That's the bottom line.
But they don't have access if it's in his kitchen either.
But they're supposed to, you know. I mean, you're talking about a county guy, you mean?
No, like that you just said your township guy.
Well, the township clerk. I mean, if I call the clerk and I need to get a copy of a document and from a township document, and it's you know, regular, you know, between 8 and 5 in a weekday, that's where the public office is for the township, and I have a right to get that, maybe I have to call ahead and maybe, well, we'll meet at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, maybe. That's reasonable, okay? But we just can't say, well, it's in my junk drawer and I'm not gonna be home for another 3 weeks. That's not gonna work for the public, that's the problem with having a clerk who is part-time, with no office, no file cabinet, nothing like that, but that's the problem when you have public documents in your private home. That's always a problem with most of our clerks, because most of our clerks work off the kitchen table. But yeah,
Right, but I mean, if you had a Dropbox-
having documents at another place is a good thing, as long as
Yeah.
the public can access them, sure.
Well, or at least all the township supervisors can access it, then any one of them could answer and forward things. It
Yeah,
seems-
absolutely. Yeah, right. So long, as long as the public wants to see a document and can get it within a reasonable time, that's the benchmark you always look for. Okay. I don't have to have it the next 5 minutes, but I can't, you're not gonna make that guy wait for 3 weeks either. That's not right either, so it's gotta be a reasonable amount of time. So, yeah. But that would be, that would work, I think, yeah.
I think where this is going is a Dropbox file with a read-only
Yeah.
ability,
Correct.
a link for read-only. That link could be made public. Anybody could access it.
Yeah.
Can't
So
do
it-
anything but read it.
So the document couldn't be changed. Yeah, sure.
Right.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
So the Dickey County stuff too, when I called over, our township clerk, or sorry, not our township, our county auditor, she said they do not keep track of any township zoning ordinances. So I wasn't sure what, if there's an actual rule that they were supposed to, or if that's something we should look into a little bit more so they can, to give us a platform where we could potentially put those on.
I think you should be able to file a paper document though, I would think.
Well, you can, but if you're looking for other township zonings, they don't even keep track of it. So a guy has trouble where to find that at. And also at the county level too, I don't think any of our supervisors for the townships have been updated since 2020. I know this is nothing that you guys, your problem, I guess, but
No,
I'm just saying how that works, and if there is actual rules, if I should call and say, hey, we need to maybe get this figured out, or what's going on. Cause I was trying to reach out to a few other township officers, and our county was way out of date on anything we were trying to find.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, that's the best way is to get talk to other townships and say, are you zoned? Can we get a copy? Because they should have a copy with their clerk, obviously. But,
but that was my trouble, is nothing was updated since 2020. So I didn't know how to get Aunt Tilly's number from whoever the township clerk was. So I didn't know if you can if there is something in state law or something where the county has to keep our township updated, through the county, or what.
Well, we regularly every year, of course, we get the mailing list from the county auditors, and I do know that some counties are slow in getting that to us. And I know that some counties probably don't take it upon themselves to get an updated list, but and apparently maybe Dickey County is that way. I don't know, but as a general rule, we find that counties typically have a good updated list of who the township officers are, with phone numbers and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, maybe what you could do would be to take a look at some of your neighboring county websites and just see what they've got on their website for township information. And then maybe show that to your Dickey County person, say, hey, look what Lemoore County's doing, look what Ransom County's doing, look what Richland County's doing as far as the township page. You could take a look at that. So you could look at those.
Well, Dickey only had 9 townships that were zoned. so they haven't had a whole lot of practice dealing with these documents.
How do you come to know that, Larry? How do you know
Because
that?
Drew told us that the other day.
Oh, okay, 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 all right, good, good.
Wasn't that right, Drew?
Yeah, I better not get quoted on the exact number, but I think there's like three or so on the DEQ website, and there might have been a couple others. Larry, I'll dig in a little bit more to get some factual information to you, so we're not blowing smoke here. But we're somewhere out of the 32. That's roughly about where we're at.
Okay, okay.
And we've the mailing list, we're having an increasing problem getting current information out of some of these counties.
Is that because the townships are not sending the information in, or what?
There's some of that, and there's growing issue with some of the auditors' offices. They're resistant to doing our work for us.
Oh, sure. Well, this turned out to be kind of a zoning hour here, which I guess I thought was going to happen, but it doesn't have to be that, whatever topic that we should be talking about. But zoning is kind of on the forefront right now. But I guess we can think about another topic or continue this one. But maybe letting Larry know what you might want to talk about, and
I'll just Can I just throw one thing out? Because I know where you guys kind of started on that Bitcoin and all this other stuff going on. I was pretty clueless of it for quite a while too. And I think I saw or read or heard from someone that I think it's on the 25th of this month. That big one down by Ellendale is going to be doing something at the Opera House. So I don't know if I think that'd probably educate people a lot better, take the word from the horse's mouth type deal, but I thought I heard that somewhere. So
Opera House where?
In Ellendale.
Ellendale, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so I find it pretty interesting once you kind of start looking into this stuff. But I think I heard of that somewhere. So
well, we're looking at in Trail County, we're looking at a 25,000 head dairy coming in southeast of Hillsboro. That's kind of in the works, and so that township is all of a sudden, bang, they're involved with some heavy issues with that. So it sounds like it's going to be a pretty good operation, but there's obviously some going to be some zoning issues with that. So it's progress, I guess, coming all over the state. So. Well, I'm done, Larry.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's got any topics they would like to take up next time, maybe you want to email them to me, and maybe we can do some research on these things and be ready to deal with them for the next go around.
We're looking at October. What are we looking at here? October 8th would be the second Tuesday. Is that what we're thinking?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
If we keep this thing going, I guess. This is our second session, so we'll see.
I may be emceeing that one from the combine seat, but that's possible too. So.
All right, well, good enough.
I think you guys are underestimating the people that want to participate. You're right in the middle of harvest and presidential debate and so forth. So most likely, I'm assuming next couple of months would be greater attendance, I would assume.
I think you're right. I just think that we thought, well, let's go with the second Tuesday and just kind of stay with it and understand that there's always something going on. But and there again, we're still we're taking baby steps because this is our second one, so we're not real sure if this is supposed to work anyway.
But thank you for your time. We appreciate it, gentlemen.
All righty.
Okay. Well,
good night, everybody.
Right.
thank you for joining us.
Yep.